would you say to, because this came up in the engagement with our audience when you came on the platform the first time, who questioned your belief in Jesus. Many people believe that you have really tried to denounce Christianity. You don't, you really don't say much about other faiths, but there is like this belief that you kind of gun after Christianity and Christian teachings and Christian principles and the teachings of Christ. What do you say to those people?
Well, I don't challenge the teachings of Christ. I actually agree with the teachings of Christ, and I've done full podcasts. Matter of fact, I just did a new episode again called Bible Study with Paul Anthony Wallace, 33-year former archdeacon in the church, who's my co-host. And we talk about in that our personal beliefs about Jesus. And so that's where there's also another misconception. Just because I'm making statements or bringing forth evidence that I believe is evidence that says that this version of Christianity has a lot of loopholes in it, it doesn't mean that I don't believe in God. It doesn't mean that I don't believe that Jesus was real and existed and did miraculous things. It doesn't mean a lot of those things. I think a lot of things get taken out of context because people only see the clips that go viral. Yeah. And a clip is out of context, because a clip is a minute or less out of a full understanding.
We know.
Yeah. And then people actually will comment on those clips as if that was the lesson, the full lesson. I'm like, you got to go watch the whole video. You can't.
Well, Billy, everybody becomes a theologian.
Yes,
in
everybody.
These conversations.
I know,
everybody becomes a therapist, a theologian.
Yeah.
Everybody is a mathematician.
Let me put on record, and I have a video that I pinned on my X page, maybe 2 years ago. It says, the first thing I want to tell you guys is, many people believe that I don't believe in God because I don't believe in Christianity. And that's far from the truth. I believe that there's a God, and the reason why I believe there's a God is because the evidence that there's a God is all around us and inside of us. We know that through several scientific things that have been discovered and peer-reviewed, that there's a fingerprint here in this universe. The first thing is, we know that the Mandelbrot set, discovered by Benoit Mandelbrot, is a fractal mathematical formula, which is only about this long, and this formula exists through all known living things throughout the known universe. And I say not only living, but even things like rocks, galaxies, hurricanes. This fractal code exists throughout everything, and this fractal code is so strong and so powerful. Pixar Studios took this fractal code called the Benoit Mandelbrot, and they put it, the Mandelbrot set, and they put it into their animation software. This is how Pixar became famous. They said, we don't have to create every scene manually. This fractal code can actually create everything on the fly, including the animation. This is straight from God. And they imported that into their animation software, and that made Pixar an instant hit, the #1 animation studio in the world overnight, because they implemented a code that, in my opinion, is literally from God itself, directly from the universe. And then we found that through Professor James Gates Jr., who's a former scientific advisor to President Obama when he was in office. He's a professor at the University of Maryland, who I interviewed him on my own podcast. He's one of the top minds in the world in theoretical physics and supersymmetry. He took a team of super mathematicians and got together to find out what is this ether? What is this universe really made up of at its deepest core level? Well, they discovered something called Adinkra codes, just like the Adinkra symbols.
Yeah.
Mali, Africa, the Dogon tribe. When you take those patterns and you turn them from flat, two-dimensional patterns, which is used for decoration and blankets and so forth now, but you turn them into three-dimensional structures, they have codes hidden in them. And inside these structures, these codes are called Adinkra codes. And these codes are not your average code. They're mathematical codes called error-correcting codes. Now, these error-correcting codes are precisely the same exact error-correcting codes that we use for search engines and web browsers.
Wow.
Yeah.
Search engines and web browsers
run on that same code that's running all of this.
Wow.
So we see the Mandelbrot set. We have the Adinkra codes. And then now let's look into geometry. Let's look into the Fibonacci sequence, right, which we can find in everything throughout nature. It's even the dimensions of the Fibonacci and the golden rectangle and the golden triangle within the human body in shape and form. So this is all circumstantial evidence that's leading to a fingerprint. So if you were a CSI agent, right, and you're looking for the crime of creation, and you're looking for enough circumstantial evidence so you can convict somebody, all these things that I'm telling you now will be put together as evidence to say, this is a fingerprint. This is being left behind by a creative force. And that creative force then leads us to God.
Yeah.
You see? So science and spirituality are been taught to be separate. They actually go together. And when you combine the two together, you get a much bigger and broader understanding than the other way where they're separate. This is only science and this is only religion, and you can't really get the big picture that way. If you want to get to the root of everything, the quantum physics, quantum mechanics, supersymmetry, and science can actually back up what's happening on the spiritual side. So because of that, and there's one more thing I want to mention. Scientists got together in a lab and they created something called an eighth dimensional quasi-crystal. Now, when they positioned this eighth dimensional quasi-crystal, and I'll give you some graphics for this, by the way, they positioned it, they created a shadow, a light shadow, a shadow of light, not a shadow of darkness, which created a fourth dimensional quasi-crystal. And when they positioned that fourth dimensional quasi-crystal in a particular angle, it created a sphere. And that sphere is a light shadow of a higher dimension, which they believe is the universe that we're living in.
So almost like a hologram.
Yes. We're living inside of a fractal holographic matrix made of light. The Bible was right. The Quran is right. All the ancient indigenous peoples were right. We are living in a creation. There's no doubt about it. What I'm saying is science is pointing to the method used for this creation. The method that this entity, God, used is a fractal holographic matrix of light, which is based on the Mandelbrot set. It's based on error correcting codes. It's based on quasi-crystals and all these other formats that allow it to allow this realm to actually exist.
So what I'm hearing is part of this cracking this code for you is not about, I think most people want you to believe one way.
Yes.
And one thing. But part of your code of what you've cracked is that the spirituality and not the religion.
Yeah, I don't want the religion because religion is man-made. Religion is man-made. When anytime I can read certain parts of the Bible where it's clearly oppressing women, where they're vindicating and approving slavery, where they're approving starvation of people, where they're approving slaughtering an entire town because one person speaks against me, slaughter the women, slaughter the children, slaughter the virgins, unless you want to keep them, it says, and you can take them with you.
Vengeance is mine.
Yeah, bring me back the spoils of war. Now, when I'm thinking about God, I don't think God needs any spoils of war. So why would he demand them to bring spoils of war back? It didn't add up to me. So what I'm saying is certain things that are in there are influenced and remixed by a flesh and blood person. Because why? Because they want to be able to implement that in the name of God and dominate another group of people. Just like the chosen land. You've got these Israeli people, Israeli fighting against the Palestinians, and they believe that they deserve to eradicate them, even though they themselves have already gone through something similar in Germany. Now they want to do that to another group of people because God's promised that they have the right to this land. That doesn't sound like, it sounds like a man said, you know what, we'd like to take this land. If we say God ordained it to us or gave it to us, then we can go here and wipe these people out, all in the name of God. We don't have to have a dirty conscience about it. It's the ego of man that's destroying things in the name of religion. Yeah. And so if you take the religious aspect out of it, you take the remix out of it and go purely only on spirituality, you go to some of the more ancient teachings, you discover that it's all about learning how to seek the light, become the light, how to transmutate all the darkness inside of you, how to love people, how to be of service to others, and how to collectively come together and make the world a better place. And I think that religion, it gives a person a mind where they don't have to take responsibility for their own actions. In other words, I can do whatever I want to do. As long as I call on the name of the Lord and ask for forgiveness, I'm good to go. Yeah. So I can go drink all weekend. I can go cheat on my wife. I can hang out in the streets. I can dog somebody out. I can judge people. And as long as I get that one last repent in before I take my last breath, I'm good to go.
Yeah.
Whereas a person can think that way, but if a person who doesn't think that way like myself, and I go my entire life being of service to others, building orphanages in Africa, helping people all over the world, building houses for homeless people, giving away thousands of dollars to single mothers for their electric bills, their final notice electric bills every year. All these things I've done. But if I never repent, somehow the person that's been killing people their whole life and doing all this torturous stuff, they can repent at the last second and they can make it to paradise. But because I didn't do that, but I was a good human being, I'm not going. You see, to me, I have a problem with that. And also, I think it allows people to feel like they can do whatever they want and not have to answer to it because they can just do this repenting thing. I think it's an excuse and an escape to not take responsibility for yourself. And people like that are waiting to die so they can live. I chose to live now.
Yeah.
I believe that the ultimate mission here is to create heaven on earth.
Absolutely.
Can we achieve that? Can you, in how many generations, can you come to the realization that you're already in heaven? The heaven you've been waiting for is right underneath your feet. Can you convert this into a heaven? Can you alchemically take the darkness and turn it into light? Can you bring a golden age to this planet? And how long will that take? To me, that's the ultimate mission.
If that blessed you, trust me, you've only scratched the surface. There's so much more wisdom, truth, and transformation waiting in the full conversation. Click the link in the caption below to watch the entire interview, and don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe so you never miss an episode of Vault Empowers Talks.